If you want to enforce the Sharia, you'll have to withdraw from the I.M.F. Huh? You'll have to withdraw from the I.M.F. Why? Because the I.M.F. articles of agreement prohibit the use of gold as money. And therefore they have made haram what Allah made halal. But that's not all. There's more to it than that. In the Quran, Allah has prohibited ripping off people. 3 times in the Quran He has said, وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُمْ. Don't rip off people. How do you rip them off? By diminishing the value of what they have. Their property, their wage, their belongings. As the value of your money falls, everything else is falling. I am a writer. I earn my livelihood, alhamdulillah, from my books. So nobody can fire me. So I have the freedom to speak. I published Jerusalem in the Quran, which is my bestseller, in 2002, so 10 years ago, right here in Malaysia. And at that time we fixed the price at 35 ringgits. And I could have sold 4 copies and bought a dinar 10 years ago. Did you hear that? Good. After 10 years, we raised the price from 35 to 40. But now I have to sell about 25 copies to buy 1 dinar. Do you understand what has happened to your ringgit? I sold 4 copies, I could buy 1 ringgit. 1 dinar. 4 copies, I could buy 1 dinar. 10 years later, increased the price to 40, I have to sell about 20-25 copies to buy 1 dinar. That's where your ringgit is falling in value. And your case is not as bad as Indonesia. It's not as bad as Pakistan. It's not as bad as Bangladesh. It's not as bad as Egypt. As the value of the paper money falls, the people become poorer and poorer. Money that Allah created doesn't fall in value, because the value of the money is in the money. It has intrinsic value. That's why the I.M.F. prohibited the use of gold as money. Why? Because they want you to be imprisoned with this paper money. They used to have paper and printing press and ink to create money. That's all you needed to create money. You need paper, you need a printing press, and you need ink. And you could make money out of thin air. Who is Imran Hosein to say that? Oh, Imran Hosein has studied international monetary economics, so he knows what he's talking about. Oh yes, he knows the subject. They don't teach the subject in the Darul Ulum, international monetary economics. No. And that's why our muftis give fatwa without a knowledge of the subject. In 1971, the United States reneged on its obligations under international law to redeem US dollars for gold. And from that day to this day, it's only paper. When they print their paper, it's called hard currency. So you can have a US dollar anywhere in the world. You could go Indonesia, you could go Bandung, you could buy what you want with US dollars. So it's very advantageous for them to print paper and buy all the oil in Saudi Arabia. It doesn't cost anything except the paper and the ink. But when we print paper, we the donkeys, because we are donkeys, we have a load of books on our backs. كَمَثَلِ الْحِمَارِ يَحْمِلُ أَصْفَارًا, says Allah. Donkeys with a load of books on our backs. We print the paper. And we go to Manhattan, Midtown, Lower Manhattan where you have Wall Street. And we take a whole suitcase filled with Bangladeshi taka. Can't even buy a cup of coffee. That's why we are donkeys. If you can't understand that this is bogus and fraudulent and haram, you should buy a one-way ticket and go to the moon. But Bank Negara will never say that it's bogus and haram. And the muftis will never say it's bogus and haram. But Dr. Mahathir explained something to us recently. And remember, Dr. Mahathir is not an alim. He's a politician. He's a secular politician. He's a nationalist. He's not an ustaz. No, he's not an alim. And he pointed out they don't need to print paper anymore. He says all that the Federal Reserve has to do now, and only the Federal Reserve can do it, no other central bank can do it, is write a check for $7 trillion. $7 trillion. And just send the check to the banking system. And that enters into the books of the banks. And when the bank lends the money to you, Egypt, I.M.F loan, and you sign the agreement for the loan, now it becomes money. Now it becomes money. So they are creating money out of thin air, but at a much faster rate than they did it with printing paper. Because imagine, says Dr. Mahathir, how many security vehicles you will need to take $7 trillion. How many printing press will have to print for how many months to print $7 trillion? Now it's easy, you just write a check. And then when the bank lends the money, it's not going to be lending $7 trillion, you know. It's something called, what is it called?
Fractionalized banking.
Fractional reserve banking? That term came straight out of Jahannam. Fractional reserve. We might have a banker here who would agree with me. Meaning, you take the money which is created out of thin air and you multiply it several times. If I have 100 ringgits, I'm a bank, I can lend 1,000 or more. Called fractional reserve banking. So this is bogus upon bogus, fraudulent upon fraudulent, haram upon haram.